Our next new SSP that we have for our cut sheet is brush layering. The definition of brush layering is this requires the harvesting of green cuttings from existing cottonwood or willow. It says alder in here. Alder does not root, so disregard the alder. From willow and cottonwood, there's some poplar species that will sprout, and you embed those in the horizontal layers. As I showed you before, this is a way of reinforcing soil as it's built up. Instead of using geogrids, or in combination with geogrids, you use our brush layering. So the benefits are there's immediate slope reinforcement from the unrooted brush cuttings. As the roots develop, slope stability and shear resistance improve. So this is a technique that gets stronger with time. Creates slope breaks that shorten the slope length. Remember, junior raindrop gets going down the slope. He hits this row of branches, he has to stop. Gets going again, like a fiber roll, breaks up slope length. These will break up slope length. It also, at every one of those little breaks, there will be a vegetative filter that could trap sediment. So sediment will build up behind there. And it promotes, and then on those little terraces, it will promote vegetative establishment and then natural succession. Willow is quite often one of those species that comes in right away. Later, as it gets shaded out, it goes away and gives up the site to the next successional plant, oak shrubs or something else. There's limitations to this. It requires an accessible and local stand of cottonwoods or willows. And you may need permits to go get those willows. You may need environmental encroachments. And remember that you need to harvest and plant your willows in our construction window, which is probably sometime from on the early end would be July up through, say, February or March. I wouldn't consider anywhere in California planting willows necessarily between March and June and July, because the dry season's coming. They won't have a chance to get established before the dry season, and they'll probably be doomed to failure. It's not recommended for rocky slopes or slopes with very, very low soil moisture. We use it on embankment slopes between 2 to 1 and 1.5 to 1. That's where it's most commonly used. You can use it in a stream or channel below the 100-year flood elevation. If you're going to build it down there in a channel, then make sure you notify hydraulics, because hydraulics has a lot of concerns about plugging up streamways and stuff. So make sure you consult with the hydraulics engineer. And it's also recommended for cut slopes with springs and seeps, because it can help weep that material up. Now you can use this in conjunction with the flap method, the wrap method, the erosion control compost blanket, and also you can then hydroseed or hydromulch or seed in between the brush layering. So let's take a look at our cut sheet here. One of the things that you want to pay attention to is that you see the brush layering is dipping down about 10 degrees. And the reason for that is some of the earlier biotechnical practitioners, such as Horst Schor and Schichtel in Europe and Austria, determined that if you laid a branch horizontally in like a mud puddle or something, it'll grow roots out of one side and branches out of the other side. Isn't that a miracle that stem material, all of a sudden it decides to grow into a root here and a branch here? It's like taking my ear cell and saying, now grow a knee. How does it know to do that? So, but when they took the branches and they tilted them slightly, so the basalin was pointing down and the base and the tip was pointing up, it grew better roots and better branches. So you want to make sure you tilt your terrace, on about a 10-degree slope to get the head up and the butt down, okay? So that's one thing to remember there. You probably, depending on your geotechnical needs, you want anywhere from 8 to 10 branches per meter to as few as 1 or 2 branches per meter. If you just want to grow a willow here and there, but if you need the geotechnical stability, you should put about 6 branches to 15 branches per meter.
What's any dimensions on here for the depth of the branch?
Right. And they're in our willow cutting SSP. And The branches are generally 2 meters, 6 feet long, 6 to 7 feet. And then also in there is the 80-20 rule. We want 80% of it back in and 20% out towards the open space and dipped. And then soaked, if you can soak them for 10 days or more, you'll increase their survivability by 70%. Soaking them, there's even papers out there that soaking them in a creek are better than soaking them in stagnant water. So it exchanges oxygen.
John, you may have said this, but what was the best time to collect willow cuttings?
When they go dormant, probably in the fall. The earliest time, best time, would be about October, maybe the end of September would be pushing it. All the way up to October, November, December is a good time to be harvesting and planting. Those would be the optimum periods. But I've harvested as early as end of July and August, let them sit in cool water and shaded, and actually started construction in September. And then periodically we would go grab out of our source there. Take a look at how they look here. Again, if we can do it up there in 1991, 103 degrees, we soaked them in these horse troughs, not even very well. We didn't know much about this. And 12 feet apart, and level terraces, and you know, we just tried the best we could. I'm not saying we got about, ultimately we got about 10% success. There's still some willows in there, but the bottom line is that slope did not fail. And then everything else we put in there came in and stabilized it. We actually got, they had a nuclear densiometer. They were actually shooting for 95% compaction on that thing too, which you can get away with in DG. You can get compaction with very little effort with the granites, and it still leaves a lot of openings for the roots and stuff, the way the granular material compacts. It compacts really nice, not so it's really super dense.